Okay, very good. All right, guys, thank you. This is the September meeting of the PRC, so it's a pleasure to see everybody. I hope everybody had a really nice summer. We have some, oh, Rob, there's Rob. We have a few regrets for today's meeting. Howard, Martin, Peter, and Lynn. Okay, so apart from those folks, I don't think we're waiting for too many other people, so I think we're good to go. All right, so let's do that. So first things first, can I have a motion to approve the agenda as distributed? Matthew, seconded by Michelle. Thank you very much. Okay, and you've already got the minutes of our last meeting, which is AI generated. So does anybody have any questions about the minutes? We're good. I edit them before you guys get them, so there's some tweaks here that are done before you guys it gets into your hands, but I think they're pretty solid. Okay.
I am, Mr. Chairman, I am delighted that you're editing AI
Yeah.
because I find that as a kind of critic of chat box and everything else, uh, I find it to be wanting at times.
Yeah, we talked about this, and then Sarah's going to give us some insight into what she's doing with AI for us. I agree, and we've said this before. I think it's a great place to start, but it's not a great place to finish. So you always have to check it, and it assumes things that perhaps it shouldn't. That's probably more a function of how you prompt what you're looking for. But having said that, I use it a lot. I really do, and I find it to be very useful. But again, I always edit what I end up getting to make sure that it's what I'm looking for. So, and we'll talk about that in some more depth, I guess, when we get to Sarah. So that's great. Okay, news and updates. So the first thing is return of Parliament. So Parliament returns on the 15th, which is next week. So there we go. So that will obviously foster more discussions when we get to parliamentary committees and the bills under review, which haven't changed since our last meeting, but they certainly will for our next meeting. There are a couple of news items I put into the agenda. So the Prime Minister is going to introduce legislation to unbelievably enough tighten the bail system again, seems to be the go-to response with respect to, and it happens on a relatively frequent basis, somebody commits a crime when they're already out on bail, which usually raises a hue and cry about how could you possibly release these people into the public where they're going to commit more crimes, which then in turn leads to proposed legislation to make it harder for people to, mostly people who have been convicted of violent crimes previously, to be released on bail. So that was part of what Carney had to say. He also indicated, oh, all right, go ahead, Matthew.
Sorry, Miles.
Okay.
On that particular very issue, and maybe Irving can help on this, have we not testified on bail before?
We sent in a brief way before the elections last year.
So will that brief, Irving, need to be tweaked?
I'm not I'm not sure. I don't have a clear answer for you. Let's see what comes out of legislation first of all, and we'll compare notes. We'll see. Uh, it might be appropriate at that time to send in a brief again, or at least send in a letter to the PM and the ministers responsible to update our brief, depending on exactly what's in there. So
Are
let's
we,
wait.
just,
Pardon me?
just a follow-up, Irving, are we in a
Yeah.
position to testify in person before the standing committee on this?
Uh, I don't know who would do who would provide testimony at this point in time.
Well, I'm way down in London. It's kind of hard for me to get to Ottawa. It's a 7 hour drive each
No,
way.
I understand. No, I'm
It's
not
a killer.
suggesting necessarily that's you. It can always be through Zoom, obviously, but I think if we were going to testify, we need somebody who's got the legal background, I think, and the experience to do it.
Irving, if I could just jump in, though I'm certainly not a lawyer, it's a topic I'm rather comfortable with, and I published a little bit on bail and all that. And I am in Ottawa, if that's helpful, but perhaps, like you said, it's better to have a legal practitioner.
Actually, Brendan, I'm in favor of somebody who's published on the issue.
Who is that?
Brendan.
I probably,
Oh,
but not as much. Not a whole lot on it, but I have touched on it, and I've worked pretty extensively with Charlotte Webster, who herself has published quite extensively on bail.
This is part of the PRC needing to recruit younger members and needing to get younger members the experience before a parliamentary committee. Even
sure.
if Irving, you're in Toronto, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, even if that's difficult for you, well, that's kind of difficult for you to get to Ottawa.
There are roads. No, but Brandon, it sounds like you're volunteering, but just a question. I'm not sure what position you're occupying now. Would you be any kind of a conflict with your employment?
I don't believe I'd be in a conflict with employment. I've testified previously, like not with the PRC, but on my own, and
Okay.
I have submitted like a conflict of interest that sometimes I do this, and I just basically never present myself as a member of the public service.
Okay.
Well,
So you
this is
sound
this is this is good news because I think we're going to need to prepare for testimony on this one. Unfortunately, not only is the current government adopting conservative party policies, but Miles and colleagues, we have no idea what's going to happen with these cuts. This so-called 15%, is that going to apply to, for example, Corrections Canada?
yes. Dick, I think
Nick,
you had your
hand
hand
up?
up there, right?
Yes, I think it'd be appropriate for me to say a few things. Um, Early in the, maybe I'd say early summer, the John Howard Society asked me to help them on developing a position paper on bail. I have spent a good chunk of the summer working on that. I don't have a draft ready to give anybody today, but fairly soon. It's about a 45-page brief that goes through a lot of the basic information about what are the concerns about bail. And then it has a brief section on using the YCJA as a model for bail reform, as we previously recommended in the brief that you were mentioning, Irving.
Yeah.
And that's also been recommended, as you may remember, by the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, that the model be the YCJ. I
Yeah.
go through that, and then I I have three sections, fairly long sections with specific draft legislation, the actual legislative wording that could be used, with commentary in each area. And those areas are judicial interim release, basically the reform of 515 of the code. Secondly, um, what is now in the code called alternative measures. And I include that because what we can do at the front end of the system can have a big impact on what happens at bail hearings. That's what we've seen in the YCJA. So the pitch I'm making is just adopt the YCJA provisions for extrajudicial measures. They've had a huge impact in terms of reducing cases in the courts, including bail cases. And the third part is not quite as long, but it is important, and that is deals with detention by police. And it makes the pitch that what we do at the front end, the decisions by police are critical in terms of release, in terms of determining how many cases are going to bail court. So I've got amendments in there. So with each of those areas, I begin with an explanation of what's going on now. Secondly, I put in proposed draft legislation, but throughout the draft legislation in each of these areas is a commentary explaining the rationale and why you would want to have legislation like this. I should say that my position will not be well accepted in the current political environment. So I mean, for example, it includes calling for the elimination of reverse onus, a huge issue. But I try to put forward some arguments on why that should be the case. Um, and I also recommend deleting the tertiary ground, which, as you probably know, is the ground that says you can lock people up in order to maintain confidence in the administration of justice. So I reviewed things like I've gone back to things like the Law Firm Commission's report work on this area. They're totally in line with what I'm talking about. Um, so anyway, I just wanted to mention that. And one thing that came to mind, this is our first meeting since I've been working on it, is if CCJA is interested in it, I'm sure John Howard Society would say fine too. And I'm wondering if there might be some way to collaborate on this and and appear to testify before the parliamentary committee. Of course, it would need to be all approved, and people would need to. I mean, I will say this is not. It will be controversial. It is not something that is sort of a mild a recommendation for reform, and it goes back to something that I know people like Tony Dube have called for. It's much more along the lines of a comprehensive reform of bail, not just this tinkering around reverse onus. Let's add 4 more offenses to reverse onus, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to get that in before we went too far, just so you know what I've been doing.
That's great, Dick. Matthew again.
I completely endorse what Richard is saying. I think a collaboration and a joint position with John Howard and CCJA would be a thumbs up. And to have a counsel like Richard testifying, maybe with Brendan as his assistant, would be a wonderful boost. And by the way, Richard, we invite controversy and critique historically. CCJA was one of the first organizations to oppose capital punishment in Canada. So don't worry about offending the ruling order.
Okay.
Thanks, guys. Great. I published on bail as well. So we have a depth of background material to draw on. So that's something that we should probably look very seriously at. The other thing, however, I was going to say is Carney didn't stop with just saying he wanted to tighten the rules on bail. He basically reported that he had a discussion at Doug Ford's house to talk about this issue and endorsed what Doug Ford had to say, which is a very right-wing position. So he's also going to look at, and this amazes me, he's going to look at incorporating more mandatory minimums into the code, right, which is the antithesis of what liberal governments have done in the past. I mean, Trudeau spent 10 years undoing mandatory minimums that Harper put in place before him. So now that Carney is endorsing that approach is troublesome. So that's also part of how we have to respond to whatever is in their bill they propose. And furthermore, they've also talked about amending the YCGA. Again, on Ford's recommendation, because there's been a fair number of violent, not always homicidal, but violent actions by young offenders, and which have gotten a lot of press lately. And again, the knee-jerk response to that is to do something about how the YCGA is applied across the board. So if Carney is going to propose in his new bill everything that he's talked about, especially with respect to his conversations with Doug Ford, it's going to be a lot for us to chew on. It really will. And so we'll have to decide how we approach it, because it's not just going to be bail. It's not just going to be mandatory minimums. It's going to be a plethora of positions that we likely want to take our own position on and put forward. So I would think when it comes out, we'll talk about it. I imagine it's going to come out before our next meeting. So, we'll circulate it and have a really fulsome discussion on how we want to approach it going forward once we actually see what's in the bill. But it's something that I didn't expect to see from Carney. But hey, it's now that he's moving off the economic file to some degree, it's what we have to pay attention to. Any other comments about this before we move on?
Miles, I just want to clarify. Did you just say that the bill will be probably released within the next month?
That's what he said in his release. Yes.
Thanks.
Irving?
Yes, Miles, just to get ahead of the curve, Richard, if I understood correctly, you've more or less completed your paper. Am I right?
I'm very close. I would welcome comment, of course, and particularly I don't have access to all the academic research I used to, so anybody that can update some of that stuff would be helpful too. But
I was
yes,
just I was just thinking when you feel that you brought it to the point of completion for as far as you can take it, if we can share it with PRC and we can start going through it and probably start sharing it with our board so that it sounds to me like there may not be much required to be added except a covering letter. And of course, I can talk to Catherine and see if we do a joint presentation. And as Matthew suggesting, yourself and Brendan, that'd be great. We have in the past when we've testified, by the way, as I recall, we've never. I don't recall being called to testify alone. It's typically it was either Tony Doob or John Howard or somebody else. So it would likely be a panel of 2 or 3 anyway, assuming we are invited to give testimony. So that shouldn't be very difficult to organize in advance for ourselves, assuming that we get the invite. Now, I don't know if they're going to proceed any other different way, but we'll see, obviously. Either which way, if you've done so much of this work, we should ready ourselves to forward it to the House, eh?
Sure.
okay.
Maybe the
Great.
Senate as well at the same time, but we'll deal with it when we get it. In the meantime, let's see what we can read.
Yeah, Dick, whenever you're comfortable in having it circulated, if you could send it to me, then I'll distribute it to the appropriate parties.
Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
I
guys.
will. I just want to alert you that I mean, it could take a different format. I was thinking because the actual legislative drafting I've done is pretty boring to read, but it's necessary to get it down to the actual wording sometimes to get your point
Right.
across. So that's what you'll see in there. But I'm open to anything in terms of what would be an effective way to present it.
That's great. We appreciate
Richard,
it.
just full disclosure, you're not a communist or a terrorist, are you?
Um, we don't have the fifth here, do we? Yeah. No,
You have to answer yes or no.
no, I'm not.
There's enough of
Thank you.
there's enough of one communist in the group.
Oh yeah, you're right.
All right, guys. Moving on, the next news item is I put in a link to you for a story on Polyev and his position with respect to self-defense, which was all again in response to the gentleman who basically has been charged with aggravated assault by knifing a guy who was broke into his house with a crossbow. So, and that, of course, has got lots of press. And again, Doug Ford seems to like to get out in front of this kind of stuff. Anyway, Polyev has responded, and his response is the right hand side of Genghis Khan. So, and his position really doesn't matter much in the grand scheme of things at this point. But I just put it there for everybody to see, and apropos to what Carney is doing, leaning towards a tough on crime agenda is problematic for all kinds of reasons. Although it's good for our business in that it'll generate a lot of work by us to try to counter that to a great degree. So, which is what that's what I was saying actually last fall in the event that Polyev actually won, is that we'd be very busy because of the Harper-like agenda that Polyev will put in place. And now it seems that there's some leanings by Carney. So I find that incredibly troublesome. But certainly something that's going to keep us busy, and that's a good thing. That we counter what's going to be coming down the pipe, because it doesn't look necessarily like much like a liberal agenda at all. So let's see how that goes. Anything else in news that anybody wants to bring to the group's attention? Okay, business arising. So this is where we usually have the reports on the 4 parliamentary committees that we're studying, but they haven't met since our last meeting. They'll be meeting, I would think, certainly before our next meeting. So we'll be looking to everybody to pay attention to those reports when they're rendered in October. The next item we have is this is Sarah dealing with the Law Commission of Ontario's papers on artificial intelligence. And an AI guidebook that was put out in Nova Scotia. And Sarah, you've got some people working with you on this, so maybe you could bring the group up to date on what's happening regarding AI.
Yeah, I would love to. Thanks, Miles. So I previously to this agenda coming out and reading through these documents that you've put forward, I was working with Michelle and Peter. Mostly, we had some email correspondence over the summer about AI and some news articles that had come out. And I was kind of trying to figure out what kind of brief to put together, and it was mostly pertaining to Bill C-27, and kind of emphasizing that that was a really important bill to be picked up. And I was in the process of creating a document around Bill C-27 specifically, and incorporating a lot of these news articles that were brought forward over the summer to me and things that I'd found as well. But then reading through this document that you've sent to us all by the Law Commission of Ontario, they actually do criticize components of Bill C-27, and call for more of a, instead of just picking it up and putting it forward as is, they seem to call for a lot more collaborative discussion around it before putting that like into motion and creating this legislation around it. So I've kind of, I don't know if everyone's gotten a chance to read through that Law Commission of Ontario, the document that you put forward here. But basically, it's a big document. I've read through most of it, skimmed most of it, and read through several sections fully. And basically, it covers a lot. AI is a really, really big topic. They kind of have 4 sections that are what they're focusing on, and then the subsections within those. So those sections are the use of AI by law enforcement, AI and the assessment of risk and bail, sentencing and recidivism, AI at trial and on appeal, and then AI and systematic oversight mechanisms in criminal justice. So there's like 5 to 10 subsections in each of these. The article, or I guess the document, highlights a lot of potential benefits, and a lot of potential risks to not having the proper legislation around all of these different areas within AI as it pertains to criminal justice. So yeah, just to, I guess for context, I can read those 2 things. So their kind of opening statement to this entire document is, AI will profoundly alter the landscape of law enforcement, offering innovation, tools, opportunities to enhance our capabilities in safeguarding public safety. This flourishing technological field promises to revolutionize how we analyze complex data sets, improve forensic methodologies, and develop secure communication channels. So AI has emerged as a transformative tool, bringing capabilities that could completely reshape policing. And then this document further states that the power of AI in processing vast amounts of data and filtering for relevant content, data modeling, and its ability to identify patterns and trends previously undetectable by the human investigators highlight its transformative potential. Beyond that, the use of AI for repetitive and resource-intensive tasks allows law enforcement agencies to work more effectively with their limited resources and allows police officers to focus on and prioritize their more important tasks. So their stance is that it's really important to be able to integrate AI, but correctly. And so they had a lot of concerns with not implementing it, how without appropriate guardrails, this technology could decrease public perception of law enforcement, like the public image of the, I guess, genuine authenticity of law enforcement, and how there's a kind of a call for human intervention, like a human involved in AI at all times. So nothing is automated, just strictly without human intervention. So yeah, there's a lot that went into this, and it was kind of overwhelming to try and think of how to present all of this to you in this meeting. Their further actions that they were recommending was basically they're really, really interested, the Law Commission of Ontario, really interested in partnering with interested organizations and stakeholders to develop constitutional initiatives. So they have kind of a call out at the end of this document to anyone interested in partnering with them or just being involved in this process to kind of come forward. There's a gentleman, Ryan Fritsch, like I'm not saying his name correctly, but he's the project lead on this. And my thought was, I felt kind of a little bit lost after putting so much kind of energy towards this brief. I've never written a brief, so I was doing a lot of just trying to figure out how to do that on Bill C-27. And then to read this, I was thinking, okay, maybe that's not the right approach. Maybe the right approach is to contact the project lead on behalf of the CCJA PRC and just tell them that we're interested, like communicate that we're interested in being part of this process and explain what we've already done so far. And like I can put together basically everything that we've already talked about and just kind of try to become involved in that process with them.
Matthew.
I completely endorse what you're doing, Sarah. I think it's a tremendous idea to do linkage with other organizations and still monitor C-27. By the way, Sarah, is that bill still active on the order paper?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how to find that information, Matthew.
We have a new parliament, right?
Yes. So it was
Oh.
dropped.
Everything gets wiped out as far as I can recall.
Yeah,
Yeah, doesn't it have to be reintroduced?
Yeah, Legis.info is the site you go to. I don't think there's a public bill, which would be the C-27 reenacted. So that bill doesn't exist any longer. So I think we have to take that obviously into consideration.
I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Miles, I think it has to come back to first reading if they have to reintroduce it and so on.
Yep.
There's certain conditions under which they can just do like an oral vote or whatever you call it, a free vote to agree to bring it back to second reading. But I'm not sure you could even do that after an election. I think you can do that in a new parliament when it's just, in between elections. But when you have an election, I think everything goes back to zero.
I think that's correct.
Yeah, so I think, I guess I'm not 100% sure what I was trying to do with Bill C-27. When I was writing the kind of like the briefing that I was going to prepare, it was mostly about I assumed that they would have to pick it up again, but and reintroduce it. But I didn't know how far they'd have to go back to be able to pick that up, or if it was still, automatically going to be picked up again. But the bill briefing that I was going to put forward was basically to reinforce how important that bill is to be discussed and to be amended.
Yeah.
If I can interject really quickly, I might just say, even if there's no specific bill before Parliament, the importance of AI in criminal justice is still there regardless. And I mean, I suppose, Eddie, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone, but I suppose it could still be a position paper on we need to do X about these technologies and all that, even absent a bill.
Right. If
No
that's
question.
what would be more appropriate for someone like myself or the PRC to do a position paper rather than a briefing necessarily.
What does the law want?
That's what I also think. I think we need to sit down and think about the principle behind AI. After all, like I've said before, it's a consumer product like any other consumer products, and there's copyright issues. There's a whole bunch of issues around AI that I think we could discuss, and that would be the tool we would use to respond to a bill like the C-27 or something like that. But I don't think we need to tell the Canadian society what's right and what's wrong. I think we need to kind of lay out what we understand AI to be for us, and to be careful about certain issues that come along with AI, rather than just be enthusiastic or not about AI. Position paper sounds better to me, for sure.
No, a position paper makes a lot of sense. I checked, so C-27, it doesn't exist at this stage of the game, so there's nothing to respond to regarding the bill itself, but a position paper would be appropriate. Particularly if new legislation is introduced, then we could compare our position with what's in the enactment or in the bill and see how we respond to it.
with a position paper and getting that kind of discussion amongst our committee specifically, if we were going to bring this up, say next meeting, my I'd like some, I guess, just some advice, I guess, on how to go about introducing, like having that conversation. And the reason I'm unsure of how to proceed is because there are, like, reading through that document, there are so many different things within AI as it pertains to the legal system and the criminal justice system. How do we, as a group, without spending 2 hours of everybody's morning discussing this, like how do we narrow down the things that are really important that we want to have an opinion on? I guess that's my question. Like, how do we proceed with actually having that discussion?
Well, I would be ready to help you, Sarah, to draft a few questions and a few comments that come with the question that we could share with the rest of the group. It would give everybody a chance to answer those questions, but add more comments or more issues that may be pertinent for everybody to think about, and we would get the conversation going like that.
Mhm.
What I'd be particularly interested in regarding criminal justice is to basically see a synopsis or some breakdown of headings and subheadings relating to issues of criminal justice that we all recognize. So the AI is proposed to deal with bail in this way. It's proposed to deal with sentencing this way. If you could break it out into things that we all recognize as individual topics in criminal justice, I think that would help.
Okay, okay. That makes sense. So, in with that in mind, I guess something that Michelle and I can do is I would love your help going over the kind of, it's just so it's so vast. I would love help kind of deciding and figuring out questions that would really help everybody contribute to this position paper. And if you want, you and I can kind of work on that in the next couple weeks, and we can send out those questions early so people have time to think about them before our next meeting. And then after that, we can kind of start the process. I can start the process on actually crafting that position paper if you want.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, okay. So if you want to get me something, you have an overview or whatever you think is appropriate
Mhm.
for distribution and send it to me, I'll then send it out and we'll take it from there.
Okay, that sounds good.
Wonderful. Thanks, Sarah. Thank you, Michelle. Anything else on this issue? Okay. All right, what do we have next? So next is I've got the position papers that Irving and I worked a little bit on over the summer. I thought Irving maybe could bring everybody up to date on what's happening with respect to the position papers that are published on the CCGA website.
Yeah, it was just an update. Matthew will certainly remember. We published this little booklet called Viewpoints, if you remember that, and we distributed it years ago. So basically, CCJ has had a position, a viewpoint, to reuse that word again, over the course of many years on certain topics like parole. We're supportive of parole, conditional sentences, those kinds of things, victims, and how do we position ourselves vis-a-vis victims. So we had 9 position papers that were published that were on our website. The latest iteration was like 12 years ago or 13 years ago, and I thought we should just update them at least, not change our positions, but update them. Like, for example, various pieces of legislation were quoted originally and have changed since, and so forth. So, with a lot of assistance from Miles, we've updated 7 of them. Miles, you're going to work on the one of them still, right?
No, we finished that. The one I was working on was record suspensions.
I thought you wanted to put a few more dots or cross a T
I,
or something.
I did. The last thing I wanted to do, I said I was going to do was going to basically update it with the latest bills and wrap it up. I sent that to you and you got it and said thank you. So I think we're done with record
Okay,
suspension.
so I'll use your final. I'll consider it the final copy.
Yeah, that'd be good. So all that remains then is youth justice.
Yeah,
And
Miles,
that's Dick's.
yeah, I apologize for not getting back to you on that, Miles. I wasn't sure what the purpose of these position papers is. I'm getting a better sense now, but I looked over the brief on the YCJA, and it was fine. But I didn't know if the goal was to kind of update our views based on what's happened over the last 20 years with the Youth Criminal Justice Act, or basically to determine whether or not the comments made in that brief are still valid. We should just stick with those. So I didn't know if it needed some expansion or not, or updating in the sense of we've got a lot of data on what's happened under the act. And I didn't know if that was something you wanted to get into or not. That's a much bigger job.
Well, they're supposed to be, each one of them is about a page. Youth justice was almost 2 pages. I think think in terms of updating and clarifying. I mean, you don't want to add another page or 2, right? So it's not a brief per se. It's just a quick kind of view. What does CCJ think about youth justice? What's our position? Where are we coming from? Where are we going to? So it's a bit of contextual stuff as well. So listen, I'll leave it up to you. You're the expert.
Okay, excuse me, Irving. I just wanted to say the updating could be as simple as reflecting a bit on what has happened over the last 20 years and say that we're supportive of these directions that have happened. Yep. Okay. That sounds fun.
If we were to change directions on any one of these 9 positions, we'd have to go back to the board or PRC and have a whole conversation, right? Like, I mean, I'm not going to take some ridiculous example, but if all of a sudden we're against parole or something, but obviously we can't just publish it and say this is our new position. So I think we understand where we're at.
I meant the directions that that the system, the youth criminal justice system, has taken under that act, and
I get it.
I think they're consistent with what CCJ is calling for.
As always called for.
Yeah.
Matthew?
Irving, when was the last time we published that compendium of policy papers?
This particular document or this booklet, I think it was 2013 or something like that. It's like 12 years or maybe even 13 years ago. I think.
So are you recommending that we update it with a new publication that could be sent to members, or you don't want to do that?
No more paper, thank you. The world is not issuing paper. It's all electronic.
But those of us who are old like paper.
Have you heard of artificial intelligence?
Oh,
that's where the world is going.
But,
I mean, no, seriously.
As I said, I prohibit my students from using AI for their papers.
Well, that's a good thing because they steal a lot of information. But I think we had a conversation at the board over the course of the last 6 months. The next issue you should get, if you're getting a paper copy of the Justice Report, there aren't that many people who are, there should be one in your mailbox this week. That's 40.2. And in a month or so, you'll get 40.3. And 40.4, if you want to read it, will be on your laptop or your PC. We're not going to print copies of that anymore, so I'm certainly not going back. The viewpoints, by the way, I mean, we did a mass distribution way back when. I've still got a box or 2 in the office, actually. And it just costs too much money to mail things. It costs a fortune to print things. And most people don't want to read it unless it's on a screen. I mean, that's reality. I was astonished, by the way. I'm getting off topic. I apologize, Miles. I was astonished how few people were requesting or adding to their membership fee the cost of the Justice Report hard copy. Really small numbers, very small numbers. So that tells me, that's where it's at. So anyway, a very long, convoluted response to you, Matthew. I apologize, but I hope the resolution on your laptop is pretty good.
Well, I'm not a big laptop reader. I'm an old-fashioned library book reader. I have an extensive criminological library that I like to unload on a young scholar. But I don't know, do young scholars like tangible libraries anymore?
I still do, Matthew, if that makes you feel better. I love a good book, but I don't know about my peers.
Okay.
Yeah, I read still, but I definitely find that I get more of my reading through audiobooks these days.
That's another option.
Yeah, very good. All right, guys. Okay, let's move on then. So the next, let me see. Oh, the next issue is an update on the Miscarriage of Justice Review Commission, and I think I've let everybody know that I have a contact On the Justice Committee, it's Teiko Van Popta, who is a MP in Vancouver. Uh, Good guy. I got to know him when I appeared before the Commons Committee a couple of years ago on this issue. Nothing is happening at this stage of the game because I presume because nobody's got the cabinet's not resumed yet, or Parliament hasn't resumed, and that's what it requires to go forward. Because what has to happen next is a call by the Privy Council for applications for those who want to sit on the commission. The money's been apparently, I mean, ostensibly was set aside for it before the election. So what's happened with that now is going to be in the new budget, I presume. Yeah, so Sean Casey, who is the Minister of Justice, Takeo is going to be talking to him next week, I would think, on moving the Miscarriage of Justice Review Commission forward. So that's pretty much all there is. There isn't anything new in that regard. All kinds of new things with respect to Miscarriage of Justice Canada, which Michelle belongs to and Stefan belongs to with myself. But that's somewhat outside the purview of PRC at this point. So we'll leave that for another day. Although there is an article in the Justice Report coming up about its establishment. So if you're interested in what's happening with that particular organization, you can read about it in the Justice Report. Okay, next issue. Again, this is one that I have some carriage with. It's the Uniform Law Conference of Canada. This is taking kind of a turn that I didn't expect. So we've been working with the conference for the last maybe 3 years, and we had them on side. We have them on side with respect to basically marrying up all the human rights codes across the country and the federal code, so that basically a criminal conviction record won't impede somebody looking for employment and or housing, so long as, with respect to employment, the record doesn't pertain particularly to that employment being sought. So they're on board with that to a great degree. So they sent me a long list of questions about background information and how it would work and what have you, which I answered for them in as fulsome a manner as I could. They then said that, and they said that before, that they want to create a committee to basically work as a subcommittee of the conference to deal with it across the country. And to my surprise, then they then asked me to nominate names for the committee, and that came a bit of a surprise because while I was certainly expecting to sit on the committee for the PRC or the CCGA going forward, I didn't think they'd be looking for me to actually strike the committee because it's a Uniform Law Conference committee itself. But having said that, I did, sent them names of human rights experts across the country that I thought would be appropriate. So all the country was pretty much covered from coast to coast to coast, kind of thing. They received that, and then the next thing that happened was that, and Howard forwarded this to me. They published their report of their annual meeting, which took place a couple of months ago, with the projects that were in the works or that they were thinking of, and we weren't on that list, which is a bit of a surprise. And so I contacted my person at the conference, and she said basically that it now still has to go before their board to consider whether they're going to be moving forward with it, which I pretty much was under the understanding we got past that about a year ago. So that's where we are. So we're waiting to hear back from the Uniform Law Conference whether they're going to be taking this on as an issue to basically unify human rights codes across the country. So that's not as encouraging as I thought it was going to be, but it is what it is. So any questions about that? Yes, Matthew.
Do you want to put this on the recurring agenda items, Miles?
Well, it already is. It's item I on the current agenda items. All I can do is when I hear back from the conference as to what position they're going to take, I'll post it and we'll discuss it at the appropriate meeting whenever that comes to be. Okay, thank you. Anything else?
Is there time? Is this were we close to adjournment?
We're very close, actually. That's the last active issue we have, and since we don't have any further bills under consideration, we are at adjournment. If that's the motion you're thinking of.
I am making the motion.
All right. Okay, all in favor? There we go. All right, everybody, thank you very much for this month's meeting. I look forward.
Let's call each other Sarah.
Yeah. Thank you everybody for your input. We'll be busy next month. Parliament resumes next week. Everybody have a great September, and we'll see you in a few weeks.
Same to you.
Miles, just
Okay, sounds
just
good.
Oh, hang on.
Miles.
Ari, sorry.
No, it doesn't concern the others. Just a reminder. I think I did communicate with you the request from the board for you to brief them at the next session on the PRC activities.
Yeah, there was a meeting yesterday, wasn't there, Irving? And
No, yeah, but there was nothing substantive coming out of the PRC yet. But our next in-person meeting is going to be starting the afternoon of Friday, the 24th of October, and the 25th. What I suggest is we beam you in through Zoom if you're available either the afternoon of Friday or any time on Saturday. Perhaps you just look at your schedule, let me know.
yeah, I will. I think that's probably fine, and I'll be glad to appear before the board. So that's great.
Super.
No problem.
So we'll be in Ottawa, so I'm sure we could set up a Zoom there for you.
Okay, very good.
Super. Just let me know what's the best time for you.
Okay, we'll do. Thanks,
Thank you
everybody.
so much.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
everybody. Bye now.
Meeting. Take care.
Okay. Bye, everyone.